Hello and welcome to another video in the Blade series. Today, Scott and I will be looking into the changes Microsoft recently implemented around Copilot. Scott, I've run into some of the differences recently myself that we're going to talk about today around Copilot. In fact, it's funny because I often use Copilot to prepare the questions and answers for these videos. So if everybody thinks I'm just magically coming up with these, it's not me. When trying to produce this particular script, I actually asked a question of the desktop version of Copilot. The exact same question I always ask it, and it all of a sudden came up with a different answer, and it wouldn't even do what I asked it to do. Then I turned around and I took that same question and the same data set, albeit in a different format, put it into a Word document, asked it, and it produced exactly the answer I was used to getting out of the other version. And so that's some of the things I think we're going to talk a little bit about today. You know, the differences between the desktop integration and the integration into each of the different products.
And that's something that's been confusing to a lot of people at first, because there's basically different flavors of Copilot now that we can talk about a little bit. And we can see you get different results depending on which way you kind of interface with Copilot as you go through the system.
How you interact with it. So now that we know the tech guys can actually be affected by this as well, let's go through the first, some of the common questions along with, you know, what is Copilot?
Sure. Well, Microsoft Copilot is an AI-powered assistant, and it's designed to enhance productivity across all the Microsoft applications, and that, you know, Word, Excel, Outlook, all of those, right? It helps you draft documents. It helps you summarize emails, which is something I really like. You can analyze data, automate workflows within Word, Excel, Outlook, Teams, PowerPoint, and all these different sorts of platforms. And also, it comes in different flavors, as I mentioned, such as there's a Copilot for productivity, Copilot for data and analytic Copilots, security Copilots, and so on. These different Copilots that you can go through. I think there's like 11 or 12 of them, I counted. So these are all the new types of ways to integrate Copilot with applications, the desktop, web browsers, and all this sort of thing.
And that sort of, it's funny, we were sitting here talking before the video. I'm one of the few people in here that have the Copilot Pro and a Copilot for Sales license. So that could explain why my version, my flavor, had more, had a different answer.
Absolutely, because they're basically, you remember, again, in a large language model, as we've talked about, you have to train the AI, and a lot of the answers that you get from the AI is based on that training. And if you train them incorrectly, if you feed them bad data, you're going to get bad answers back out, which makes sense, right?
So that would explain why mine's a little subpar.
Maybe. You need a little more training on your part, I think.
All right, so everybody hears the word Copilot, right? What is Copilot built on?
Well, you know, it's interesting because we hear Copilot out there, there's Claude, there's all these different AI, LLM type models going on out there. And, you know, a lot of them actually used OpenAI's GPT-4, ChatGPT, right? Use their technology to be the kind of the brains behind everything that's going on. So it's kind of in the center there. It doesn't rear up its head and say, hey, this is OpenAI piece. It's kind of hidden within the Microsoft products. And Microsoft is a huge investor in OpenAI as well. And that's, I'm sure, one of the reasons they chose that for being their platform.
Oh, well, that helps make sense, because that's one of those things where you start to think, man, all these people are developing their own backend. Maybe not. They might all just be using ChatGPT.
That, you know, at the very beginning, everyone was trying to take it from scratch. And Microsoft, they tried to do their own, and everybody did those. But yeah, you're right. You know, once you have something that works and then can be licensed out to people, I mean, that's really a better model. It's not like every time we need a word processor, we have to sit down and write it.
Exactly.
You know, it just, you go buy it from Microsoft. Same idea with ChatGPT.
Well, that makes sense. So, I guess beyond the obvious making things go faster, what are some of the benefits of using the Microsoft Copilot system within a business?
Sure. Well, number one, it really, boosts productivity. That's the biggest thing. You get more done faster and generally with a lot less friction, right? Things just happen better. I mentioned I use it a lot for emails, and I deal with a lot of lawyers who are pretty verbose, let's say, in their emails. So there's a lot of information in there for me to go through, and I can easily just one little click when I look at the email, it'll summarize it for me and just give me a brief summary. So then I know, this is something I need to look at right today, or this can wait till tomorrow or the next day or something like that. So productivity is one. Automating repetitive tasks. That's a big one, because if you're doing the same thing every day in a certain way, you can automate that and just let it go on its own and go from there. So you can also, I mentioned summarizing emails, generating reports. It can also help you make decisions. It can use the data that it's been trained on, which is your data, and you can actually help ask questions and ask, okay, Copilot, I'm thinking about doing this with the business. What do you think? Type of stuff. So they can actually look at the data and pull it back out and make those kind of determinations. All this stuff is, works in progress, of course. So it works maybe, about 60% of the time. But it's getting a little better on those more complex type, insights that it gains.
Nice. So if I decide to start selling a different widget, I should ask it whether I should sell the widget.
Yeah, there you go. Make all life decisions. You have to talk to Copilot first.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Please see Copilot for further information.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. All right. So now that it has all the information about me and it's making all my life decisions, what are the major security concerns that I should be worried about with Copilot?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because before you think about implementing any sort of software, a word processor or and a large language model type system, security should be the first thing you ask. It's all about risk. Wherever I see risk, that's what I'm always looking for. Where's a problem? And some of the things that Copilot does, it does a lot of data tracking, right? It's watching what you're doing, so it learns, right? Because you're essentially teaching it as they go through that. It monitors your activity. It does keystroke logging. It can do screen recording. It can grab data off your cloud-based and all this kind of thing. So that's really powerful, and that's where the concerns are. But what this is not unique to Copilot. It really is the same sort of concerns that most AI large language model implementations have. They all have to get access to that data. They all have to be able to watch you to see what you're doing and so on, so it can learn. So, Copilot's not unique in being the most insecure one. Everything's insecure, but don't let data privacy concerns with Microsoft Copilot stop you from using the tool. It's valuable, but you just have to address the risk. I know, for example, the American Bar Association came out with, I believe it was Formal Opinion 512 just a little while back, giving guidance to law firms on when they can use large language model stuff. Can they use it to draft some sort of legal document they have to file to the courts? And this document gives some base level descriptions of what the minimum things you need to do. That includes training. That includes having good policies and procedures on how this is going to work. You also have to make sure that your security from a user perspective is correct, that you don't have one person that has way more rights than they should. You need to have your users should only have the minimum number of rights they need to do their job, sort of thing. So really, it definitely security concerns with Copilot as we go along here, but it's not like they can't be mitigated.
Yeah, it's like everything else.
Yeah, it is. So. It really is like anything else. If you're not patching it and keeping it up to date and so on, you're probably going to get broken sometime.
Yeah, put the guardrails up and protect it. So that leads us into the next thing, and one of them is the question before was more of what does it do? This is what are the problems? Why is it a cybersecurity risk?
Right, and probably the biggest reason it's a risk is because it's like all LLMs, it's a sponge when it comes to data. It sees data and it sucks it up, and it wants all that data because that's how it learns. You kind of use a analogy of a bacteria or something. It's gathering up all this information as fast as it can, and that's probably the biggest risk you want to address is that data collection capability. And let's say you have your data and it's hosted in Microsoft's cloud, and then it gets exploited by cyber criminals, and they have your data,
right? And
it's a big problem. Well, in this case, you're relying on Microsoft's security controls to make sure that they're safe and can't get broken into. And frankly, Microsoft has a little bit better concerns than most companies, with 50 people or so. So you're a little bit better in that state, but you still have to be able to look at the risk and determine how you're going to mitigate that risk. So do you have proper contracts in place with Microsoft? Let's say what happens, what is the procedure if this happens? So you have people to call. That's the way you mitigate that kind of risk.
Yeah, and that goes back, we experienced a lot of this back when Office 365 took over for in-house Exchange servers, right?
Yeah.
It's like you said, Microsoft has a building full of people dedicated to stopping threats that get into these specific things. They're going to do the same stuff with Copilot. We're just at the early days.
Yeah, it's early days, it's yet, and you're right. And one thing we're also seeing is Microsoft is increasing their data center space. There was talk about
power.
Yeah, they were thinking about starting up with the 3 Mile Island.
Yeah, reactor number 2.
Yeah, the one that still works or still could be worked. And that kind of thing. So, and they're really using that power in those data centers for the AI, for the large language model, and that's how much power is there. So, if they're spending billions of dollars on all this stuff, they're going to be spending at least hundreds of millions of dollars on their security platform. You would think, at least.
Yeah, that's what went through my head was it's either reactor 1 or 2, whichever one didn't melt down.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like 1.6 billion or something that it's costing them to restart a basically abandoned power plant from 2019. And it's like, if they're going to spend that much money updating, I watched a video on it, updating that system, then what do you think they did to protect the data? It's not little.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's one of those things, if you ever do talk to Microsoft about, tell me exactly how you guys do this, you're going to get a big no. Because
no.
For obvious reasons. Yeah, you don't want to have somebody who's not involved in like top secret stuff, like on the chat, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Spill the tea. So, all right. What is the controversy surrounding Microsoft's announcement of Copilot integration?
Well, there's a few things with the Copilot integration, so on. First, it's a forced integration of Copilot across all Office 365 applications. So if you're using Office 365, you will get Copilot within Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Teams and so on and so forth.
It's like the Kool-Aid man.
Yeah,
it's here.
It's here. You've got it now. And now, if you've gotten it, and everybody's going to get this, right? Because you're going to get updated into that. So you need to have some policies, procedures, and understanding on how you're going to be able to handle this once all your users are going to have a large language model that they can use on just at any time to do anything, unless you have some controls in place. So that's something you want to look out for. Also, they tacked on a nice large 30% price increase with this as well. And there's still always the concerns that we always have is who controls the data, where is the data, who's protecting the data, these sort of things. And those are just your consistent questions you ask anyway. Right. So.
Yeah, and that was from my perspective, because I'm the sales nerd, right?
Yeah.
the 30% price increase, that's going to be a real game changer for the license that people pick. So I think we'll get into talking a little bit about, people need to engage an IT partner that knows that Microsoft licensing.
And actually, be truthful, I rely on John's expertise. He has to spend, I don't know how many hours a month just to keep up on how these licenses work. So he's kind of our in-house, expert in that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, all right. So Microsoft has decided they're going to do this. How does that forced integration impact businesses?
Well, you have different businesses are going to have different impacts. For example, let's say you're a company and a healthcare concern that has to comply with HIPAA. Okay, and there's a new revision of HIPAA coming out too. That's another thing that's coming down the pipe. But anyhow, you want to look and get advice from your technology consultants and your legal consultants on what you need to do with your policies and procedures now, or in your HIPAA manual and these sort of things, to be able to say, hey, we use Copilot or large language model. Here's how we use it. Here's how we don't use it. Here's how we secure it, that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be a book. I mean, a 2-page memorandum in there would probably work, but check with counsel, check with your IT people to find out exactly, because other compliance, if you're a DOD, if you work for the Department of Defense, you're a subcontractor there's going to be a huge number of federal regulations and standards that you're going to have to comply to as well. And part of that does talk about, the data moving from place to place, hosted in the cloud, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot there that you need to work with. So that is probably, I think, is how it really impacts people the most significantly is they have to rethink their processes and their policies, procedures, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, and in some cases make them.
Yeah, I ran into a customer just recently that I said, "Give me your policy procedure handbook," and I got a blank stare.
And they go,
yeah.
Then you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, then you have to start from scratch. But that's okay. It's doable.
So that's actually the next question. What actions should businesses take to protect themselves from Copilot's risks?
Well, that's the thing. You have to look out for these basic things, and the security being one, and policies and procedures. Training is one thing we didn't mention. That's important too.
One.
If you're really going to turn Copilot loose out to your end users, give them some training on what they can and can't do. They'll get them started faster and make it more productive. Because I'm really pro the platform. I think it's a great thing. I think it's going to be a major part of Microsoft's portfolio going forward. But people have to get a little training, have to get a little the types of understanding of what I can do with this. Like for example, can a lawyer have Copilot write a legal document and then just give it to the court? Well, according to the ABA, that's no, you can't do that. A human has to look at it. So those sort of things.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's so funny we talk about all these things. A lot of the same things apply to everything, right?
It's
like train your people on how to use the email, train the people on what not to click, get cybersecurity training. This is going to fall in at some point into some type of cybersecurity training.
Yeah, it's here. It's
Don't
now.
feed the credit card list to the AI and ask it to figure out how many people you have, because it's going to keep it.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, whatever information that you feed into it, it uses it, it absorbs it like that sponge, and it's going to be there forever. So,
yeah. All right. So let's say you've been watching this video, and I've now got you so nervous you want to run and hide in a box. What are some alternatives to the Microsoft 365 and Copilot systems that people could consider?
Sure. Yeah, my 365 is the kind of the big gorilla out there, but also Google Workspace I think is like the second biggest gorilla, and that's what Google's offering is. And it gives you a Gmail, of course, and it gives you a word processor and a spreadsheet and a presentation software, so on and so forth.
And Gemini optionally.
Yeah, Gemini being their AI. But it's optional on the Google. That's a good point, and you're not forced into it. So Google Workspace might be something you want to look at. There's free versions of those too. Zoho Office Suite, LibreOffice, Nextcloud Office, all these different types of platforms are either free or low cost that you can use instead of Office 365. Just be aware, even though they should be compatible together, if you're going to switch over to anything like Nextcloud, for example, and all your clients and business partners use Microsoft 365, you might run into problems with compatibility of documents and that kind of stuff. Not probably as bad as it used to be, but there's something to be aware of. That's just, again, another risk that needs to be mitigated.
Yeah, that's back to Open Office.
Open Office.
And I opened the Excel doc, and it looks nothing like the one I had because they're not exactly the same.
Exactly. The coding's different, the display's different. Yeah, you never know.
All right. So we alluded a little this earlier. So there's that 30% increase. What kind of financial impact is that going to have on these businesses, do you think?
Well, we primarily work with small to medium folks, right? 5 to 500, that sort of thing. And it's going to be a big deal. I mean, it really is for that size of customer. Because even if let's say you have 10 people, you're talking about another $300 a month to stay at your same level of Office 365.
Yep.
And for a lot of people, I mean, that might even be doubling what they're currently paying. So I think we are going to have some people and have some discussions about what are some alternatives to using 365. It's not the first time Microsoft raised the price on something, and it won't be the last. And it's just something a business owner needs to take a look at the pros and cons and do a sophisticated analysis of, what about Zoho or Office 365? Now, which one's going to work and why? And get input from your people out there before you make a big decision, just maybe rashly.
Yeah, and am I going to lose $300 in productivity out of one person by switching?
Yeah, or you look at it the other way too. Yeah. Am I going to get $300 more by moving forward with and I think, depending if you're an information worker, I would think you would make that money back. Just to increase productivity. You have to give your folks a little training and so they understand. But I know for me, I mean, even just the summarizing emails piece is
it cuts hours.
Yeah, that's a lot of time out of my day right there. So.
Yeah, it's really funny. So we've both been doing this a long time, and I worked at in a retail store that sold software. And when Office went from $99 to $399 back in the day, you would have thought the place was burning to the ground. Now people regularly pay $20 a month for the license forever.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I think Microsoft is going to show that this Copilot product is worth that 30% increase.
Yeah, and they're smart. I mean, one thing Microsoft does great and always has is marketing.
Yeah.
Explaining, here's our product and here's why you need to buy it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you're going to see it. I was just noticing, actually doing a little research last night. It does seem like there's a lot more, hey, let me explain this to you type of stuff on the site now. So, which is good.
Copilot's no longer the thing in the background.
Yeah. Exactly. So. Now it's getting press. It's up front. Everybody's curious. People are using it. Yeah. It's be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah. So, as always, caution is the name of the game. So, as we've talked about, really, we just need to take a step back, look at how these changes to the Microsoft products and the integration of Copilot's going to affect our businesses, right? And then the key here is, don't try to be an expert on it. Engage somebody that is. Scott already alluded to how many hours I spend doing licensing things. Nobody on earth needs to spend time doing that. Go ask the guy that has to do it for his job.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Same thing with the settings. Don't try to dig in and figure out, all the settings within Copilot or the advanced security stuff. Engage your technology partner.
Sure.
That'll keep you safe and compliant, just like everything else.
Right.
So,
no, I think that's great advice.
Yeah. So, Scott, as always, thank you so much for your insight.
My pleasure, as always.
And your expertise. Thanks to all of you for watching. This is John and Scott from Blade. Take it easy.